that's okay with everyone. The key principle behind this topic, behind today, is how to make money work harder for you. So I'm going to be going back to basics when it comes to investing, and really just to kind of promote financial education to the community. And I guess this stemmed from a conversation that I had with a friend of mine a few weeks ago at pub over dinner. And he, a bit about his background, he worked for KPMG for a number of years, now works for a financial consultancy firm. So I kind of almost assumed that he knew what he was doing. When in actual fact, he said, well, David, I've got cash, I've got money sitting with a company called Nutmeg, and I don't really know what to do with it. So he almost was, he had money, but he was time poor, as it were. And I got speaking to other people about similar things, and similar problems started arising, hence starting these calls. So what I want to do is really give some generic, impartial advice, and just impart as much knowledge as I've learned over the course of my career to you guys. It's certainly not going to be a sales pitch. You know, you don't have to go with my advice. You don't have to collaborate with me. But if I can communicate some pearls of wisdom, then that's great. A bit about my background. I've had an interest in kind of financial markets and investing even before university. I then went and did a financial accounting degree, and then since leaving university, I pretty much went straight into the field of wealth management, and obviously then became a qualified financial advisor. And it was almost about 4 or 5 years ago that I really started heavily day trading. Now, there is a big difference between trading and investing, and perhaps I'll come on to that a bit later, but I just want to impart as much of that knowledge onto you guys as possible. So I'm going to keep this super high level, not technical at all. I know there's a different wealth of kind of experience in this room here today. So if anyone wanted to kind of have a one-to-one with me after to talk about a specific topic that might be prevalent to you, just let me know. I'm more than happy to do that. But a key part of this for me is understanding what blockages you guys have and exploring the problems that people might have when it comes to investing. So before I start going around the room and getting everyone to kind of introduce themselves, I want to talk about 4 fundamental principles when it comes to giving financial advice. And the first one is, now again, this might sound obvious to someone, and I apologize if I'm teaching people to suck eggs here, is you always need to get rid of your wealth drains first, okay? So your unsecured debts, your credit cards, your car loans, before you think about doing anything else. Has everyone ever read that book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad? Some people have. What do you think of it? You can take yourself off mute if you want to.
So, I really liked it. I had it recommended to me. I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah. Was there anything in particular that stood out from you in that book?
I don't know. It was a few years ago I read it. Primarily just kind of attitude, that the way he talked about how people with money think about money, not necessarily what they do with it per se, but their attitude towards it. Kind of this, like making it work for them. So rather than it being a way of improving their life in the short term, it's more of a long-term approach.
Yeah, I think people's attitudes to money is very, very important. And there's a book that I'm reading that's really good on that topic around the millionaire mindset. It's probably not for today. Natalie and I are actually working on a different workshop entirely just around that topic. But that's certainly very important. What I'm going to be talking about is some kind of actual investment vehicles that people can use in, but certainly your mindset plays into that. But a key thing that came up for me in that book is the idea of what an asset is versus a liability. Okay, so shout out, who knows what an asset is? What do assets do? Go on, John.
Okay, I'm unmuted. So assets are actually, I don't know the exact definition, but things that can bring in money by growing, like for example, maybe a tractor on a field, making sure the land can produce potatoes or something. So you can use this machine to produce things that can can be sold.
Yeah. So yes, exactly right. Very simply, an asset is what puts money into your pocket. Yeah. So yeah, if you've got a profitable piece of farmland, then yes, great, that is an asset. Okay. So on the other hand, what's a liability? Something that takes money out of your pocket. Yeah. So you want to have more. You want to have more things in your asset common than your liability common, and that sounds super basic, but that's what you. If you can get your head around that, that's the first key bit to kind of think about. So get rid of those wealth drains. Okay. Cash is king in a lot of instances. Okay. So what we try and promote is having at least 3 to 6 months of your total costs in an easily accessible cash fund, a rainy day emergency fund. Okay, now why is that important? Well, I'll come on in a bit more detail later on, but essentially what you don't want to be doing is finding yourself in a situation whereby the worst happens. You know, you lose your job or you come into some sort of financial emergency, and then you're going, right, okay, I'm gonna need to take money out of my stocks and shares ISA, for example. That's not, you do not want to be in that situation. So try and have 3 to 6 months of your total costs in a savings account or current account before you start doing anything else. Okay, everyone clear on that?
Yeah.
Third key point, invest for growth and not income. Again, pretty simple concept. Why do I say that? Well, I suppose a lot of people, if I was to invest someone's money, and they go, right, fantastic, you got me some growth, you've earned me £200 in a month, let's say, just pulling figures out of the air here. Fantastic, I'm going to take that out, I'm going to go down the road, down to the pub and spend that, or go out shopping and spend it. Right, that's great, but in order to achieve long-term wealth, what you need to be doing is keeping those investments in the market, because of a thing called compound interest. Okay, that's key here. And if you can get your head around compound interest, you're halfway there. Does anyone understand what I mean by that what I mean by that? What I mean by compound interest? Caroline, if you could.
Getting interest on the interest. And then interest on that interest on the interest, and up and up and up it goes.
Spot on. That's exactly why you want to be investing for growth and not income in the early years. Okay, yes, granted, when you're in your retirement, when you're in your 60s, fine, yes, invest for income. But when we're young, do that. Another way of thinking about it is, let's say you've got a piggy bank, right, and you've got kids, and you tell your children to be putting pound coins into that piggy bank, perhaps on a monthly, daily, weekly basis, whatever it is. And then you as a parent is just slyly going up to their piggy bank and putting in pennies when they're asleep. And they're not even realizing that that's happening. And over time, they're going, looking at piggy bank and going, wow. And that's a crude example, but money literally does make money. And you can't make money if you don't have the money in the first place. So keep your money invested. The fourth key principle, is that clear to everyone now? Yep. Four key principle, again, super basic, is you must have a goal that you need to try and obtain. Yeah, there's no point in going out on the road without a map or a sat nav if you don't know where you're going. You need a goal. And that will therefore determine the investment strategy that you want to utilize. The time horizons will play into that, and obviously your attitude to risk as well. But all those factors will determine what investment tools you want to be using, the different asset classes you want to be utilizing, so on and so forth. So is everyone clear on that part as well? So really simple, basic 4 principles there. So I'm going to stop talking now. And what I'd love to do is just kind of go around the room. And if I could just get you to quickly introduce yourself. Perhaps your background, what it is you do, but most importantly, what brought you here today, and if there's any specific question that you would like me answering. And hopefully within the next 45 minutes or so, I can have enough time. If not, we'll carry that on into the next session. So Natalie, if I could pick on you and start with you, and we'll just go around the room. Thanks.
Yeah. I knew you were going to pick me first. Okay, so my name is Natalie. I work full-time in sports consultancy, but last year I trained as a holistic life coach on the side. So that's my kind of side hustle at the moment. So really interested in this area, and particularly beliefs that we kind of have in childhood around money and how that kind of goes into affect us the rest of our life. I find that fascinating. But my challenge is I'm very much a beginner investor. So I'm struggling to get my head around that compound interest piece. And for me, if I make £500, I want to take out £500. So I think just understanding that a bit better would be really helpful.
Great. It's understanding how concept interest works in practice a bit more, would you say, or what would be?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, just understanding that a bit better. And I think for me, it's just listening to having a more, better understanding of the topic in general, I think will just help, because I'm such a beginner that initially there's lots of information. So it's just sitting with that a bit, and also understanding other people's challenges, I think will just help me a bit more.
Lovely. Thanks, Natalie. John, start with you. I'm just going to go for what I see on the screen.
So hi everyone, I'm Jorn, calling from Amsterdam. So last year I actually studied in London, and now I'm working here as a business analyst for a company called Cognizant. What I know about investing, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, some other book from it's called Unshakable from Tony Robbins. This one also had some good advice and talked about index funds. So actually I want to learn more about where to buy index funds, and I know the reason why actually is because the fees on index funds are quite low in comparison to actively managed funds. So I actually want to learn more about this.
Brilliant. Okay, so I'll make sure I cover off index funds before.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. So have you started investing into index funds already and those kind of ETFs?
Not in funds yet, but I started in stocks last month on Revolut.
You started in where? Sorry, in?
I use an app called Revolut. It's,
Revolut. Okay.
You know Revolut, right? Yeah. So I'm using this, and then I did some crypto trading, like I said. So in 2017, before the big boom, actually bought some, but then I also made the mistake of thinking oh, it's going up and up and up. So I bought some on the way up as well. So that's why I didn't make as much, but last year I just pulled everything out. So I ended up doubling it. So that's fine.
Doubling it and then getting out.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Good news. Yeah, I do find investor psychology, especially in the crypto world, fascinating. Why do people buy high and sell low? Perhaps it's a topic we can come on to on the stage. Brilliant. Thanks ever so much for that. I'll make sure I cover off those points. Lana?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Lana Nichols. I'm an accountant. So I work with small business owners, but my best clients are small investors, the overseas investors coming to London to buy to let or buy to renovate. And as I work in London in the last 10 years, so my majority of my clients are families. So I work with 3 generations, so the children, the parents, and the grandparents. And quite often the client asks me, oh gosh, my son just graduated universities, and I really want to get him into sort of properties, or I want to teach him a little bit about investing. And he's a graphic designer. He doesn't know anything about investments. So they quite often ask me for recommendation who they can talk to, or if I know anyone. So my interest today is to know a little bit more about what David does, and if I somehow to help my clients with this. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So how to get into properties and just investing in general?
Well, it depends on the interests of my clients. I mean, the most recent one, the mother is the one of the hotel chain, and her son, because he doesn't need to work hard, he really doesn't know what he wants to do. He tried that, he tries this, she's really sort of worrying about him. So sometimes she asks me to send him to the property investments shows, or to find some financial advisor to invest him in different stock and shares, how to invest and what to do. So this kind of things.
Fine. Yeah. Okay. I'll try and cover property investments at some point then as well then. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, Anna? What? So I can't quite hear you. I think you might need to put your headset on. No, can't hear you. Should we? So I'll come back to you, Anna. Maybe if you can sort of put your headset on. Lucy?
Hiya, I'm Lucy. I know Natalie. So I was introduced to David, and I've actually sort of started investing a little bit in stocks and shares on Hargreaves Lansdowne app. And it was off the back of a conversation I had with someone at work who had been to Tony Robbins' sort of seminar thing. And to be honest, I literally have no idea what I'm doing. So I've been plugging into it for like 3 years. I actually have no idea what I've done. So it's useful just to kind of learn a little bit more about, like you were saying, John, about sort of like the fees and stuff, because I know that I've put into some funds where there are fees. And because I've not invested a lot at the moment, because I've only been doing it for 3 years, it's obviously quite important that I look to kind of start putting it in the right places now, before I've been doing it for another 3 years. So just learning a little bit more about that would be really good. And also, it's obviously a really complex world, so trying to navigate where to just kind of put your first step would be really good as well, because I think I've kind of jumped the gun a bit, and it'd be nice to kind of go back to square one, and find the initial best place to maybe start navigating through all of this.
Definitely. Well, it's fantastic that you have started. You know, I obviously saw your portfolio the other day, and you've got individual stocks and shares, and you've got different funds, so that's brilliant. That's almost the hardest thing, is just get going. Okay, so you want to understand Hargreaves Lansdowne, the fees, and perhaps where best to go with that money that you already have invested. All right, kind of understood that right? Sorry, you're muted. So
maybe like you're saying, I need to kind of like consolidate it down, because I've sort of been putting things willy-nilly. So it might be good just to try and, from step one, how can I organize myself a little bit better, and kind of analyze where I should be putting it.
Okay. We can certainly start talking about that. I think perhaps first call, maybe it might be better to kind of have almost a one-to-one.
Yeah, that's cool.
Avenues you can take, but I can certainly start talking about that, definitely. Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks, Lucy. Anna, can we hear you?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, I can hear you. Yeah, lovely. Okay.
My other headphone didn't work, probably. So yeah, my name's Anna. I work for a clinical research organization, writing tenders for them. So our clients are pharmaceuticals, biotechs, things like that. I have no idea about the investment world, so I'm a complete newbie. I've started looking into everything, really, because I need to know about everything. It's a bit of a maze to me. So really, I need to know from the beginning.
Great. So completely from scratch, where do I go? Where do I turn to?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay.
And why cryptocurrency versus the most normal trading, so to speak? Sure.
Okay. I'm trying to avoid talking about cryptocurrency as much as I can on this call, to be honest. I'm sure some of you have already heard of it. It's an extremely risky style of investment. Do I trade it myself? Yes, I do. Would I ever put any advice onto it? I certainly would never. Again, we can talk about that perhaps another time. But I think giving you an indication of where best to start, cryptocurrency certainly is not a good place to start. For likes of you, and I'll certainly touch upon that. Great. Freddie?
Morning, everybody. So I'm Freddie. I work in IT sales myself as a profession. So similar to some of you here, I know a little bit about investment. I myself, besides having a pension, which really at this stage isn't really a choice, let's say, I've got nothing going on from from an investment perspective. I own a property that has done very well over the last few years. I suppose that is something, but in terms of investing, my commission check, I haven't. It is sat in a current account accruing a very, very paltry, I don't even know what the percentage is at this stage. I keep getting letters from the bank saying that it's reducing month on month, which is great. I very much know that I need to get into the investment world. I've got friends, some that work with Hargreaves Lansdown as well. I've got others that do it themselves through the various apps, but it's one of those aspects, I suppose, of, you know, stood at the door kind of looking in and thinking, well, where the hell do I start? I have some friends that invested in, you know, the black sheep of the family being cryptocurrency and have done very well out of it, but equally have read some particularly nasty horror stories. So again, I suppose I'm here to tool up and to understand what best practice looks like and where one should start, I suppose.
Brilliant, fantastic. Yeah, okay. So you've got a pension. You're thinking about Hargreaves Lansdown, but you're also thinking about crypto. Yeah, I mean, I imagine Hargreaves Lansdown is going to come up quite a bit. You know, it is a fantastic platform to get started. I use it, for example, for my own ISA. You know, it is a brilliant do-it-yourself, really easy to use platform. Perhaps one session I could actually just do a full demonstration on the usefulness of it, but so you know, it's a great place to start. But also property as well, Freddie.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Jack?
Morning, everybody. I'm Jack. I know David from our networking group. I work in project management for people that suffer damage to their buildings and have to make insurance claims. I've been doing bits of investing for 2 or 3 years, but not really managing any of it myself. So I've got a private pension and various different ISAs for myself and my wife, and now a junior ISA for our son. We've got some stuff in Hargreaves Lansdown, and we've got some bits and pieces through a different IFA that isn't David, with St James's Place, in various portfolios. But the issue I have is that I don't have a clue what I'm doing. So I'm trying to do all of these things that I think are sensible and considered and kind of for the long term, but I'm completely reliant on this this professional person that was recommended to me. Everything appears to be going well when I get my statements through, and she's delivered exactly what she said she would do, which is great because I feel like it's working, but I don't know if it's the most efficient way of doing it. And I would like to understand more about what she's doing so I can have more of an input on it, because as those investment sums grow over time, I don't like the idea of being completely reliant on this one person if for whatever reason she's unavailable or stops working or has a bad day, whatever it might be. That risk, my risk grows as I get further into it. So it's really a general overview of what to do, what the smart things to do, and probably what the real things to avoid are. So if I have conversations with her and she suggests something, and I'm prepared to say, actually, can we steer away from that, or can you at least explain that to me, because I've had advice previously that maybe that isn't the best thing to do. So yeah, it's getting a more grounded view of what the different options are is really what I'm looking for. And then anything property related is great for me, because I've got my professional background is in that. I've got buy-to-let property already, so that's the area that I am comfortable in and do feel like I understand reasonably well. But I have conversations with a good friend of mine regularly about how we're going to kind of get into it, and if we look to do this kind of rent-to-rent things, which are becoming more popular now, but can be pretty difficult to get into, or whether we just go down that traditional buy-to-let route. So anything property related would be fantastic.
Okay, fantastic. Lots to go out there. I suppose coming back to the whole advisor piece, what that person would be doing is putting your money with a fund manager.
Yeah.
Who is continuously looking at different stocks and things to pick. Now, some people love that because they don't have to think about it. You know, they can almost just put their money away, and hopefully it's working for them in as an efficient way as possible. I suppose from what I'm hearing from you, though, is you want a bit more of a hands-on approach with regards to where that money is invested, do you?
Yeah, potentially. When I know enough, at this stage, I want to know more, so I'm more comfortable with what's going on. And then if I get to a point where I'm quite happy to pay the fee to let somebody else that really knows what they're doing deal with it. But I would like to have a better understanding of what's going on regardless. And if I got to the point where I had enough knowledge and time to do more with it myself, then I would. But that isn't my primary goal. It's more just to understand, in this instance, what's going on, so that I'm more comfortable with it. Yeah,
I mean, that person, whoever he or she is, should be able to give you that information, because every fund manager will be telling that advisor where exactly the money is, whether or not it's in different what markets in, whether or not it's in different commodities or bonds or different asset classes. So she should be able to tell you that information.
Yeah, she's given me the reports. It's more, and that's brilliant. The breakdowns are quite transparent. It's more understanding the value of those things. I'm not going to contest with them whether it's the right thing to do or not, but it's more so I know exactly what each of those things mean. Is
it more, I'm just trying to drill down a bit here now then, is it more, so you want to know, right, if she's in, let's say, American equities, let's say, American stocks, is that the best place to be at the moment, as opposed to, I don't know, a kind of a bond fund? And by the way, guys, I'll ask you.
Yeah, I think so. It's more, I appreciate she'll give me the feedback that she's meant to do and does particularly well, but if I understand what those things are, so whether it's equities or bonds or various different trusts, I would like a better understanding of what each of those things are and what they entail, so that I can be comfortable, also from a kind of like an ethical point of view, to make sure the money's in places that I want it to be. We're not things we should, I don't want to support or things like that.
Right, yeah, okay. So what I'll do then, shall I just go after all this? So I go through what the different asset classes are, what they mean and why they might be good in today's world, for example. Would that be of help? And then potentially what?
For me, yeah, that would be fantastic.
Go into. Okay, I'll concentrate on that then, and I'll come back to that. Thanks, Jack. Caroline.
Sorry, I'm Caroline. I'm a bookkeeper. I turned 60 in lockdown, and I read this book called Your Money or Your Life, which is all about your relationship with money and planning your life and stuff. It's really aimed at younger people, and it bangs on about investing and saving every penny you possibly can. The target being that at some point you will reach a point where your potential investment income is the same as your expenses, and working then becomes optional. I quite like to reduce my working hours, and I have got a bit of money which I probably normally would just have left in my current account. It's not a huge amount of money, but I'm now wanting to make it grow and work for me. People tell me to stick it in an ISA. I don't know how to put it in an ISA, and I don't know what sort of ISA to choose. I know my brother has money in index funds, but he's a lot younger than I am. I used to have an ISA with my online banking, and every now and then I just drop little bits of money from one account to the other with an online transfer, and it was easy. But currently I have a property which I own outright and some premium bonds. I have no savings, no ISAs, and nothing else. I spent it all buying my flat. And I have about 5 or 6 pension funds because I've had an interesting life. I just want to make the little bits that I've got that I possibly can save work. Not long term, just short term, but that's it really.
Okay, so where to open the best ISA, how to do it?
Stocks and shares ISA, cash ISA. People, they say buy an ISA, then you look at ISAs and suddenly it's, oh my God, how on earth am I supposed to know which one's best for me?
Certainly. Okay, yeah. So, I mean, I'm going to quickly touch upon that point because it's quite quickly. There are 2 different types of ISAs, as Caroline has said. There are cash ISAs that are advertised online, on TV, by the different banks, Santander ISA, whatever. Because interest rates are so low at the moment, they'll probably yield you maybe 0.5%, 1%, 1.5% if you're lucky. It's a good thing to do to utilise it as having a kind of a cash account, but in real terms, over long term.
Can't hear you very clearly.
Oh, sorry.
No, I can't either.
Oh, can you hear me better now?
That's better, yeah. I think you're just a bit far away from your mic.
Oh, sorry.
Caroline.
Sorry? Mute myself. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Oh yeah, okay. So well, as I was saying, so there were two separate forms of ISAs, and ISAs are always the best place to start when investing. And I suppose this might answer a few questions earlier. The reason why is because they are the most tax efficient form of investment there is. Whenever it comes to investing, you always need to think of what is tax efficient for me to do. An ISA, just like anything else, is just a different tax wrapper. So you might have ISAs, pensions, and unit trusts, as an example. And within that tax wrapper are the different asset classes and stocks and shares that one could put in. Now that is entirely down to you or myself as a financial advisor to advise on what those should be. So cash ISA, as the name suggests, is just cash. It will only give you 0.5%, 1% perhaps year on year. And obviously over time, if you're looking over, let's say, a 10-year time horizon, that cash is then going to get eroded due to inflation. Okay, so it's a good thing to have for short-term needs, but not a good thing to have for long-term goals. So what you want to do is open a stocks and shares ISA. The best one to choose, I mean, it's horses for courses. It depends on what your attitude to risk is and what your goals are, as I said earlier, Caroline. You know, do you want to be going into a super adventurous fund at the age of 40? Probably not. But that's where my advice would come in terms of picking the most relevant funds that are suited to you and the most relevant portfolio. Perhaps what we should do is have just another session, because I'm just worried about time, another session purely just on ISA investments at another time. That might be a good idea, but hopefully that's kind of answer your question, Caroline. As I say, I'll probably just do an hour session on that altogether in another stage. Thanks so much for that. Adam?
Yeah, hi. So I've got my own company. I'm not able to invest lots of stuff at the moment, but I've got a big, half decent pension left over from my previous employer, HSBC. So I'm keen to make sure that that's working as hard as it could be. And then something that, and I've got a few other bits of investments, and I've dabbled in crypto and specific equity shares, and I've got some index stuff. But I guess the other thing that I'm not sure many other people have mentioned, but I think maybe you alluded to at the start, is sort of managing all the kids stuff as well. You know, my dad's set up various small pensions for the children, and they've got various sort of savings and bits. So there's a sort of a bigger picture there, making sure that, you know, not least because what you said about compound interest and stuff, and making a few good decisions now could yield, you know, really big differences in 10, 20 years time. So so that's sort of part of what I'd like to get out of these sessions as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so I'll talk about index funds then, as that's been brought up before. But yeah, child investments is extremely important. There are different ways of doing that. You could open a pension for a child, or you can open up what's called a junior ISA. The amounts that you can put into that have recently been increased quite substantially to £9,000 a year, I believe. There's an example of what compound interest can do. So let's say if you to invest just £5 a day for a child, just purely for 10 years from the age of 0 to 10, okay, so what's that, about £150 a month? And all you do is invest £5 a day for 10 years, and then you stop at age 10. That child's pension fund will be worth north of £1 million by the time he or she's reached 65. And that's taken into account 7% growth year on year. So, you know, not completely out of the question, but it just goes to show what the significant effects are of saving small amounts of sums regularly over time. So child investments, perhaps that's another topic we can touch upon as well and at a later date. And you know, what all the different tax wrappers are and rules are around investing for children, because there's lots of things you could do. Not one of course is opening up, let's say, investments, which is another thing entirely. But okay, thanks for that, Adam.
Thanks, David. I've really got to run now, so appreciate it, and catch you next time.
No worries. Cheers, Adam. David?
So a combination of what people have said. So I run the HR department. We're a outsourced HR service provider for small businesses, and we provide a range of things: recruitment services, leadership coaching, and training beyond also HR advice. As a new business, obviously I'm keen to have a better grip of the finances involved with that in running a new business, but I'm a late entrant to properly managing my money. So I've joined really just to pick up as much as I can to help me understand better what I could be doing better.
Brilliant. So perhaps we could run a session just purely on how to build capital, how to raise finance for a small business. Yeah, would that be good?
That would be good. Yeah, that sounds good.
Awesome. Okay, I'll make sure that's a topic for a future date. Okay, and Bob, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Just having a bit of trouble with the video, so.
Oh, it's all right. Yeah, okay.
Looking at funny faces.
Yeah. So over to you, mate.
Yes. So I've backgrounds in credit risk, so sort of looking at the lending side rather than investing side, but financial modelling for high street banks.
Yeah.
I've got a little Hargreaves Lansdown pot, like other people, as a sort of pension top up. Been doing okay over the last year. It's sort of gone back to the very beginning, so sort of a return of nothing. So I'm looking for ways to maybe round that out and make it a bit more robust to changes in the cycle. I still think it's the right thing to do, but maybe during bad times, maybe if I can flatten out the sort of dips and troughs. Different ways of doing that. Similar to what Jack was saying about the properties, so looking at maybe different asset classes in terms of buy-to-let, that sort of thing. And also, yeah, very interested in the tax and how you can make it more efficient. So get maybe an extra 20% as you're going into it. Sort of get returns on that rather than sort of losing, paying tax on it and then getting your returns on 80% of your money.
So tax efficiency, tax planning when it just comes to investing in property, or tax planning in general?
Yeah, in general, yeah, a bit of everything. So at the moment I've got it in just an investment account, so I don't know if it would be better off going into an ISA or a SIP or...
Yeah, okay, so another session could therefore be just pure on tax planning investment strategies. I mean, again, just super simple here, guys. You know, the most efficient way, as I've said, is to put money into an ISA. There are, of course, different exemptions and allowances people can be utilising. For example, everyone has a capital gains tax allowance of £12,300 a year. Caroline will be able to tell you more about that as she's as an accountant and mine as well. But this is where the kind of 5th and 6th of April are key milestones in any year, because you can almost sell down your investments, utilise that allowance, and then on the 6th of April do another 12,300. So that kind of all plays into how one manages his or her own investments, whether or not that be stocks and shares or property. But there's lots of different exemptions and allowances out there, probably outside the scope of this one meeting, but certainly happy to spend an hour just talking about that one topic. And then you mentioned different asset classes as well, and what to do in bad times. So are you talking about kind of when markets fall, where you should be putting your money? Just coming back to you there, Bob. Oh, I think he's frozen. I'm going to assume that's a yes. Okay, fine. Okay, so lots of content there. What I'm going to do is just pick on one that came out, I think, from Jack. Oh, hang on. I've got someone waiting to be let in again. 15 minutes left. And that were kind of, if I understand correctly, Jack, what are the different asset classes where you should be placing your money at this moment in time? Because fundamental basics, whenever you're kind of thinking about investing your money or designing any kind of portfolio or fund for the future, you've got your main 5. Okay. So the first one that everyone knows about is cash. And I'm going to sorry for people that aren't football fans, but I'm going to use the analogy of a football team here. Cash is almost your goalkeepers. Yeah, extremely safe, but they ain't going to be getting you any goals. Yeah, unless your name's Peter Schmeichel. But they are really defensive, key to any well-rounded portfolio. Okay. And the next level up, your defenders are your bonds. Okay, what is a bond? A bond is essentially a debt instrument. It's a loan. So if I'm a company, and my name's Microsoft, and I want to raise more capital, I will be issuing corporate bonds, and I will be giving you a fixed rate of return depending on the risk of that loan. Okay. That also, for example, applies to governments. So governments, it's called gilts. So at the moment, the UK government and other governments are pouring in lots of money into the system, which is called quantitative easing. They're basically issuing gilts, or the American government are actually also issuing corporate bonds on top of that as well. So it's still a safe asset class that one could go into, but it's going to give you a higher rate of return than you would have from cash. Okay, so again, bonds are important in any design of any portfolio. The third level up from that, almost your defensive mids, are your commodities. Yeah, your oil, your gas, your gold. Gold is actually performing very well during this period. It almost has a kind of a negative correlation between how markets are going and the value of gold. So when markets are falling, gold funds are sometimes where you want to be. But in terms of any long-term growth, it's not going to be performing quite nearly as well as things like equities and property, but the next things I want to talk about. And again, I'm sorry, guys, I'm keeping this super high level and very brief. I can go into this in more detail at a later stage in terms of the specific ones and what they mean. So you could therefore go into just a purely and simply commodity fund if you wanted to, or commodity index fund or commodity ETF. And I'll explain about what those are in a minute. The next one you've got, and what people have brought up quite a bit, are property. So you could get your own buy-to-let property as an investment vehicle, or if you wanted to, you can go into property funds or what's called real estate investment trusts. And all they are is they collate an amount of commercial property, let's say a load of Debenham stores or retail outlets that you see perhaps on motorways, for example. And quite simply, you then receive the rent that fund, those amalgamated properties are receiving as an investor. So that's somewhere else you could go. Yeah, property funds or property real estate investment trusts. Now, unfortunately, because of what's going on, a lot of investment houses, including us, have actually closed property funds, purely and simply because it's very difficult for you to put a valuation on commercial property these days, because a lot of people aren't paying their rents because of what's going on. Yeah, but that is another asset class that you can go into. You can pick a specific fund for that, or again, it can add into your portfolio. The final one is equities. Now, equities are what's going to be scoring you the most amount of goals, but they are going to be the most volatile. Okay, so what do I mean by an equities? Equity purely and simply is an investment into a company. So you can buy stocks and shares in blue chip companies, for example, the likes of Microsoft, Apple, Facebook. And purely and simply, you will either obtain growth if they're doing well, depending on the share value, or you can ask for income, and that's received in the way of dividends. And that kind of comes into what I spoke about earlier in the call, difference between investing for growth and income. Okay. Does that make sense? I'm going to stop there. And does anyone have any questions in regards to what I've just said? No, pretty straightforward. Okay. So what they entail, I suppose, coming back to your point, Jack, in different moments of time, those asset classes are going to give you different benefits. clearly when markets are falling and you've got a fund or portfolio that is very highly weighted in equities, you are going to lose money quicker than if you were to have a lot of money in cash and bonds. And the vice versa is true. If in rising markets, you do not want to have lots of money in cash and bonds, you want to have lots of attackers, you want to have lots of equities. And that's where an actively managed fund or portfolio comes into its own, okay? Because you can manipulate differences in prices and you can take advantages of essentially cheaper prices when markets are falling. Because when markets are falling, it's not actually necessarily a bad thing. People say, oh, the markets have fallen by 10, 20%, the FTSE or whatever. Oh my God, what's going on? When in actual fact, that is the perfect time to get in there and start finding some good deals. Okay, but there's a lot of kind of reverse psychology there, and I know a lot of people probably wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. So those are the major asset classes, and that is where someone like myself would advise on the best ones to take. Okay, and all those different assets then get bundled up into different investment wrappers, ISAs, pensions, as I mentioned earlier, and that is completely down to you in terms of the split that you have. Now, going back to John, your point earlier, in terms of index funds, or what some people call exchange traded funds, which there is a set difference between the two. Now, a lot of people say, well, okay, what is the advantage of having an actively managed fund versus an index fund? Because as you said, John, they're cheap, aren't they? A passive fund is a fantastic vehicle to utilize. What it will basically do is follow a particular index that it's linked to. So does everyone know what the FTSE 100 is? Okay. Basically the combination of the UK's largest 100 companies. Okay, so there's one particular index in the UK, which is the FTSE 100. There are others out there. Some of you may have heard of the S&P, the Standard & Poor's 500, which is the 100 biggest American companies. Also things like the NASDAQ, which are all the tech firms. Okay, there's lots out there. So what a passive will do is use almost computer algorithms and computer-aided program to follow exactly what those companies will do. It's cheap, it's simple, it's a fantastic place to start for any kind of beginner investor. And what I also always say to people is that there is a general argument between passive and active, and what's better between the two. My answer is it's good to have both. It's not necessarily one is better than the other. It's always about having almost a diversified portfolio of different strategies that one could therefore utilize. Because the issue with passive funds is when markets are falling, your fund is going to fall as well because it mirrors the index. Whereas with active management, there's an argument to say, well, when markets are falling, as I said earlier, you can pick and choose the right stocks that are going to be performing well in that particular market. As an example, during the last 3 to 4 months, if anyone was invested in US tech, you would have been jumping for joy. Yeah, US tech and e-commerce is where you wanted to be over the last 3 or 4 months. Vice versa, you did not want to be in any airline stocks or any travel companies. Yeah, those companies you may have seen. Virgin Atlantic just this morning trying to get bailed out by the US government. They've just filed for bankruptcy. That is, and Warren Buffett has famously lost his investors millions of pounds because he was heavily invested in those areas. It just goes to show no one really knows what's around the corner. Okay, so again, it's diversification that is key. So, John, does that kind of answer your question in regards to passive funds and what they mean? So, and if anyone, sorry, David, I don't got a message. If you need to drop off, do you have a further question in terms of that? Hopefully that's kind of.
Yes, it's clear. But where would I buy it? Like, which one can I choose?
Vanguard is a fantastic area to go if you just want to use passive ETF funds. There are other platforms that one can utilize, but they are the biggest player in the industry. Okay. That's not to be confused with things like exchange traded funds, which work on a similar manner, but you can almost trade those as if they were a stock in themselves. Okay, yeah, but have a look at Vanguard as a good place to start. Yeah, definitely. Definitely clear on that.
Yeah, thank you.
The next one that kind of came out, and I know I've only got a few minutes left. Hargreaves Lansdown came up quite a bit, and I suppose, as I mentioned earlier, the difference with Hargreaves Lansdown, which is a fantastic place to start if anyone wants to, and the likes of, for example, what I would offer as a service, is you get to pick and choose your own stocks or your own funds. Now, there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands out there, as you can probably imagine, on a global scale. It's almost like, where do I go? And that's, I suppose, the issue is that a lot of you are having. The difference is with going someone like myself, and again, I don't, this is not a sales pitch, so don't feel like you have to, is that I would do the research to find the most appropriate stocks and shares and funds for you, rather than you having to do yourself. Okay, so off the top of my head, I'm not entirely sure what the charges are with Hargreaves Lansdown, but it would depend on the different stock and fund that you choose. And of course, it's going to be another associated cost. I think someone mentioned cost earlier. I can't remember who it was. I think it was Lucy, actually. There would be an associated cost of that advice, clearly, but that's the difference. And some people want that hands-on approach, I suppose, like you were saying, Jack. Some people just want to kind of put their money away and almost forget about it. What else came up? I'm just going to quickly go over my notes. But Jack, does that kind of, I know because you had some very specific questions there earlier, and does that kind of does that help in any way at all?
Yeah, I think it does. I think like you said, on a high level, it does. A better understanding of the asset classes is ideal, because that was one of my real kind of grey areas. I didn't really understand what those differences were or what you might use them for. So that makes a big difference, actually. Yeah.
I think as I said earlier, I think what I'll do is I'll spend just one session purely and simply on asset classes, and I'll go into greater detail in terms of what they all mean and why they want to be utilized. But again, the most important point here is that one is not necessarily better than the other. It's about having a diversified approach and almost having a bit of everything. Again, come back to the football team analogy. You don't want to have a team of just full strikers. You don't want to have a team of full defenders. It's about having a mixture of both. And again, this would all come down to what your goals are, what your attitude to risk is, what your timescales are. If someone comes to me and said, David, I want to buy a house in 5 years, I probably wouldn't feel comfortable putting that person's money fully into stocks and shares or equities, because you're going to be submitting yourself to an element of market risk. And that really is what you're doing when you're buying equities. Yeah, you are getting paid for taking on risk. That's what you're doing, purely and simply. Hi, Claire.
Hey, David, how are you?
How are you doing?
Really good, thank you.
Fantastic.
I've literally just stuffed up completely.
It's absolutely fine. We're literally just rounding off, actually.
I'm really sorry. I thought it was 9. I've just realised how close I am.
It's absolutely fine. Claire, it's actually good that you joined. And if anyone needs to leave because it's now 9 o'clock, then please feel free to do so. What I'll be doing is I'll be collating all the information that you guys have told me about, and I'll be putting that into future meetings. So whatever you said, it hasn't been forgotten. There's obviously a lot of things to cover here, and but this is just a kind of an exploration chat, if it were, if nothing else. But hopefully it's been a bit useful. So Claire, just quickly before we kind of round off, was there anything in particular that the reason, why you're here, or any kind of questions that you might have when it comes to money or investing?
Oh gosh, where do I start? I guess just education, really. I think we've had a conversation. I've had money sitting in my bank for many years, which is just absolutely doing nothing. So, getting my money working better for me, and where do I start with that? Because there's so many options. That's where I'm interested in.
So, okay, so you've got money sitting in the bank, and really you just don't know what to do with it.
Doing absolutely nothing, David. So I know, and I've been aware of it also. So it's kind of like, gosh, when we met, I was like, gosh, we need to do something, So when you mentioned this, I thought it would be great.
Awesome. Okay, so yeah, that comes up in 8 out of 9 cases, to be honest. Yeah. So I'll do a session on where to start almost. So is that money literally just sat in a current account, cash account at the moment? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Fine.
Super embarrassed to say. So I've invested in property for a long time, which I love, but I've still got sort of bits and pieces that isn't enough to buy my next property, but it's just sitting there, So
got money. Okay, great, fantastic. So another session perhaps on property, because that's come up quite a lot as well, especially around the kind of tax implications of doing that.
Yes, that'd be really interesting. And shares, investing in shares as well. I'm interested in diversifying my portfolio as well.
Brilliant.
But I see you've recorded this, so if I would love to. I'm really sorry, everyone, to be so rude coming in late. Apologies.
What I'll do, I'll circulate the recording. I'll send around the key kind of learning points and problems that people are facing, and then I'll kind of put my head to paper and think about a more specific topic at the end of next month, so we can have a proper deep dive in terms of specific need areas. But is that okay for everyone? What would everyone really like to get out the next session that they perhaps we've missed out on today? Just shout some things out.
I think, David, Freddie here, I would probably say that starting would be the most logical place to start, something for myself and a few others, sort of starting from a standstill, I suppose.
Starting from a standstill.
Well, obviously, you made a recommendation there in Vanguard and a few others, which is interesting and certainly worth looking into. But I think that, starting from scratch, what are the rules of engagement? What are options available?
Yeah, Vanguard, Hargreaves Lansdown, Moneybox is a good one. You can literally just save your spare money. What's another one? Nutmeg is another good one. It's what a friend uses, but they utilize these kind of passive funds. But perhaps that's something to talk about in the next session. So I'll do that to the end of September. So starting from a standstill, and then we'll take it from there.
David, sorry, David, it's Anna here. So I wanted to just maybe raise up one question. So I have pension with my company, and then I have, I think, another pension that I had with another company. And would you recommend putting both of them into the same pot, or can you take that first pension and invest somewhere else?
100%. And obviously you mentioned Caroline, pension consolidation is important. Yes, because what you'll probably find is that in your old company, once you move out of that firm, that pension will probably be moved to cash or a very low yielding fund. Right. As we've just explained, if you're looking to invest over a long time, which obviously you will be doing because of your investment, there is an attitude to say, right, why don't you go ultra high risk, take advantage of that compound interest thing I spoke about earlier. And even if there are falls in the market, you've still then got a lot of time to make up for any losses. So that's why I said time is always an important factor when talking about an investment strategy. So try and combine those into one, which I'm more than happy to help you with if you wanted me to. And then it's just about managing it as best as possible. So who are those pensions currently with?
I can't remember right now. I think my current one is Scottish something.
Scottish Widows, yeah.
I think so. And the other one is another quite common company.
No worries. Okay.
I can't remember now, but I've got all the paperwork, but it's just sitting there because I don't understand it.
Okay.
But basically with pensions, you can only put it into another pension pot, you can't take that out and invest elsewhere, can you?
You can't take money out of a pension pot once you reach a certain age.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, I know, but I just thought you can only consolidate it into one pension, basically, not put into any other stocks and shares or manage it yourself.
You can manage your pension yourself. You could put it into, for example, a Hargreaves Lansdown self-invested personal pension.
All right.
Which my father does, but do you want to be looking at that every day, worried what's going on?
No.
That would give some people a massive headache. The alternative is you give it to someone like ourselves, for example, but again, you don't have to, whereby we would essentially just manage that pension pot for you.
Right. Okay.
But you can manage that yourself. It doesn't stop you from doing that. It's just, don't think you can go and take money from it.
No.
As long as you're moving your money into a different registered pension scheme, then of course, yes, that is allowed.
Okay, good. All right.
Does that make sense? But maybe let's have a chat, just me and you, after at some point, and then we can talk about that a bit further if you wanted to. But yeah, certainly happy to help if I can.
All right. Thanks.
Both of you, Caroline, because I know that came up with you as well. Any final remarks, questions before we kind of?
No, but I have to run. But thank you so much, and lovely to meet you all.
Lovely. Cheers, Natalie. Thanks ever so much. Yeah. Any more from any more?
Thank you, David. Was helpful.
Great. Okay. I'll let you know about the next one.
Thank you very much.
No worries. Thanks very much.
Okay.
Take care.
David, thank you.
Cheers, David.
Thank you very
Thanks very
much.
much.
Thanks.